Hello everyone! With the last Mission Impossible film coming out, I thought I'd do a little tier list video and give my thoughts on each film. The only one I'd seen before doing this whole binge was Dead Reckoning when it first came out in theaters. I didn't even know anything about Mission Impossible back then, but it's been really fun exploring this whole franchise from the start. So let's get into it. First up is the original Mission Impossible from 1996, directed by Brian De Palma. It follows Ethan Hunt, a spy played by Tom Cruise who works for the Impossible Mission Force, or IMF, not the World Bank. This was a very fun watch, and I was surprised how small and contained it felt compared to Dead Reckoning. It's lighter on the stunts and big action set pieces in comparison, but is still uniquely tense and thrilling throughout, mostly thanks to some absolutely excellent directing. This kept me on the edge of my seat the whole time without too many frills. It relies mostly on a very solid script and plot with a lot of great twists and turns. Here we get into spoiler territory, but basically the whole premise of the film is kind of a twist, that being that Ethan Hunt's whole team is killed and he is blamed and forced to go rogue. I wasn't aware of this initial premise and was genuinely taken aback, but I think this could have worked even better if the rest of the team members were better established at the beginning. I was sort of confused at the table scene where they were laying out the mission and everyone was just kind of nodding, since it seems like such a layup for introducing characters' different personalities. This makes it a bit less shocking and impactful to see them die. It kind of just seems like they knew they were going to kill them off, so they didn't bother to develop the characters too much. But that's my only real complaint, along with some dodgy special effects towards the end. I'll also mention I like the acting, and Tom Cruise totally owns this role. This is a classic and a highly enjoyable spy film. It's going in the great tier. Next is 2000's Mission Impossible 2 from John Woo. In this film, Hunt searches for a bioweapon alongside a thief played by Tandy Newton. This is the least critically acclaimed film in the series, and I can see why. It feels very tacky and falls victim to many early 2000s action film tropes I dislike, especially the ugly, overly saturated visuals and color palette. The direction is also a step down from the original. It has none of the tension or flair of the first and tries to be really artsy with how it's shot, but just has zero juice. The music might be the worst part about it though. It's very generic and cheesy, but it's not just poor stylistically, it's also poor story-wise. The plot gives you nothing to care about and feels entirely aimless. The way the characters act is extremely bizarre. None of them or their interactions feel real at all. For example, during the beginning, the scene where Cruise and Newton's characters meet each other is so goofy. They literally just stare at each other, meanwhile a bunch of slow-mo dancing goes on. A couple of scenes later, they have a super dangerous car chase for seemingly no reason. One of the silliest scenes is also when Newton's character's boyfriend grabs her scarf midair when it's coming off her in the wind. The whole thing is just weirdly overdramatic. Unfortunately, this whole film is a downgrade at every level, and I have nothing nice to say about it. It's going in bad tier. This was of course followed by Mission Impossible 3 in 2006, this time helmed by J.J. Abrams. In this film, Hunt is now engaged to his fiancée Julia, but has to return to espionage to fight arms dealer Owen Davian, played by Philip Seymour Hoffman. This was a definite step up from the second, but still nowhere near the first in terms of quality. Sadly, it doesn't ditch the 2000s ugly color palette. This time it has a more greenish look, which is not as bad as the previous one, but still aesthetically unpleasant. It has a lot of shaky cam, which isn't my favorite thing either. Overall, the direction is just kinda alright. The action scenes are fun though, and I enjoyed the one a lot where Cruise jumped between the two buildings. Getting into the story, I thought this would be a lot better without the flash forward intro. I'm usually not a fan of those, they kinda just spoil the plot for you. It feels like the filmmaker thinks you're dumb and can't handle exposition scenes without knowing it's going to get exciting eventually. I also didn't think Hunt's wife was well established at all until the climax of the film. She basically has no character and is just a damsel in distress. And sure, she's cool there and it's a great end to the film, but she isn't bringing anything beforehand. This movie does introduce Simon Pegg's character Benji though, who's one of my favorites in the series. I also like Lawrence Fishburne's performance here. There's some things I liked. I think the last act is pretty solid, but overall it's pretty mid, so it goes in the mid tier. And where they start getting good again, we've got Mission Impossible 4 Ghost Protocol from 2011. This one with legendary animator Brad Bird directing. When the IMF is shut down, Hunt and his team have to independently prevent nuclear codes from getting in the wrong hands. This movie works incredibly well in my opinion. The directing and aesthetics are refreshingly clean, and the plot is relatively simple. This minimalistic style pairs well with the sheer chaos that's actually occurring in this movie, because this is a really stressful movie, to be honest, and that's what I love about it. It throws you in the deep end and doesn't let up at all. Tom Cruise is literally almost about to die this whole film, and it really freaked me out. The Ghost Protocol, where they're stripped of any safety net or government help, makes the whole thing very ragtag and is a great storytelling device. The plot not being too complex made room for more action scenes and stunts, which are probably the best in the series here. Particularly the Burj Khalifa sequence is just so awesome. I also love the intro sequence where they break into the Kremlin and seeing their cool technology. Cruise and Pegg killed it as always, and Paula Patton was a great addition to the team. Jeremy Renner was alright. I think I'm kind of biased against him because I always associate him with the Jeremy Renner app and being Hawkeye, but this is my favorite in the series. It goes in absolute cinema tier. Thank you. Our next installment, coming in 2015, is Mission Impossible: Rogue Nation. This is the first one with Christopher McQuarrie in the director's chair, where he would stay for the rest of the films. Hunt, now blacklisted by the US government, has to fight a mysterious organization known as a syndicate. There's some really excellent stunts in this. The intro scene with Tom Cruise on the plane is one of the best in the series. The underwater heist sequence also freaked me out a lot. I also like the addition of Rebecca Ferguson's character. She plays a very compelling double agent. The plot is pretty good as well. They definitely do the Civil War thing of blaming the people trying to prevent destruction because destruction occurred, which is fine. Alec Baldwin is also fine. But I think the interesting stuff here is more so in Simon Pegg having to pretend to be against Hunt while secretly helping him. The villains are just goofy enough to be interesting, even though their motives aren't particularly defined. I like the ending though because they outsmart the villains instead of having a big fight, and the ending is a bit more chill but still satisfying. There is some good cinematography in this too, particularly in the knife fight scene with Rebecca Ferguson. There's a lot of shooting scenes where professional spies have stormtrooper aim, but it didn't bother me too much. This is another strong entry, but it has a few flaws. Still goes in great tier. Following this was Mission Impossible Fallout in 2018, where a team must prevent terrorists from acquiring and using nuclear weapons. This is by far the most acclaimed in the series, so my expectations were pretty high. As far as the cinematography and action are concerned, this is probably the best in the series. This looks totally beautiful and has a lot of tasteful lens flares. The locations they picked out look incredible, especially the mountain range at the end. The skydiving scene is amazing, and the shots of them in the plane beforehand look so good. I also love the bathroom fight scene. The characters feel so strong and all of the violence has such weight to it. It all feels really visceral. The final action scene with the helicopters was also amazing. It actually reminded me of the car sequence in Wild Tales, if you've seen that movie. Doing everything with as little CGI as possible and having Tom Cruise do his own stunts pays off super well. However, I think the plot here is very flawed. This is the longest film in the franchise so far and it feels it, especially towards the middle. There's a scene in the middle of the film where there are like 3 or so plot twists in a row and it just feels insanely bloated. It's also bloated with characters. They bring back Julia, who I don't really care for. I do like Henry Cavill's character though and think he is a good foil to Tom Cruise. The ending sequences are probably my favorite in the series, but this really falters in the middle and struggles with an overly complex plot. I think most people would put this higher, but it's going in great tier for me. Next up in the series is 2023's Dead Reckoning Part 1. Here, Hunt and crew are back at it again fighting a villainous AI program known as the Entity. Changing up the villain here was definitely a good choice. I think the AI program makes for a good villain. The scene where it started imitating Benji's voice was very creative. I also think the key makes for a good MacGuffin, but this ends up with a lot of the same plot issues as Fallout. The middle feels very slow with lots of dialogue and plot scenes that aren't particularly interesting. This had me getting a little bored, which I can't say about any of these movies since Mission Impossible 3. I thought the sequence at the airport was really fun, but the section in Venice felt derivative of previous films. I thought the motorcycle stunt at the end, as well as the climax where Cruise and Atwell had to save themselves from the train crash, were great. This is overall shot well, though it doesn't look quite as good as Fallout. Something I like about this series is how they give each character unique traits and roles. Benji and Luther are great here as always as the guys in the chair. Haley Atwell is also a welcome addition, playing a morally complex thief. I kind of feel like they haven't known what to do with Ilsa since Rogue Nation though. This was fun, but had some issues. I'll put it in good tier. And lastly, The Final Reckoning, the last installment in the series. Here, the evil AI program, the Entity, has taken over the world, and our IMF team must stop it once and for all. Just saw this in a packed IMAX theater. I have to admit, I've gotten very attached to this franchise over the past 2-ish weeks watching these, and I was nervous because this was getting a mixed reception. And maybe it's recency bias or the fact that it's the only movie in this run I saw in theaters, but this is like one of the best, if not the best. I completely love this. The plot here is simple and clear, with the stakes and plans clearly laid out, which is generally how I prefer these films. I saw a lot of complaints about too many flashbacks, but they didn't bother me. They're pretty present, but it really wasn't that many, and it didn't ruin my enjoyment or anything, like it was fine. But what I love about this is the tone. It feels like a finale, it feels like the end times, it feels dark. They play a lot with nuclear war in these films, but here it just feels so ever-present and on the horizon. You feel how the Entity just has this chokehold on everything. This is really shown in the scenes of the US government where they have these people working and the huge maps with all the countries getting taken over. You also feel the seriousness in the performances, like everyone just knows they're about to be cooked. All the characters here are great too. Tom Cruise, the GOAT. Luther, love him. Benji's great. Paris is awesome. I love how she only speaks in French. I really enjoyed Haley Atwell's character too. She's had such a great arc in these two films. I also liked Tremel Tillman, Nick Offerman, and the CIA guy that they brought back. I thought Angela Bassett was really great as the president, and I thought she had an interesting character arc too. The action scenes and set pieces are also top notch here. The scene right before the credits roll was very cool. I also really enjoyed the ending sequence on the planes. It's similar to Fallout, but still a great ending. But the best one I have to say was the underwater sequence. The whole thing felt like a horror movie. It gave me chills. I could feel it in my bones. I love how they shoot these films and make them feel so visceral and realistic. This was totally insane to watch. And as for the AI villain, I think it completely works and was well executed. It feels topical right now and is so pressing with where we are as a society, with not just AI but war and chaos and division and the seeming lack of truth. I think people will look back at this film and the historical context it was made in, and it'll make a lot of sense. There have obviously been AI films made before this, but this really hits in 2025 especially. I think like Ghost Protocol, this makes you super anxious the whole film, which is how I like them. This has been getting mixed reviews, but it really connected with me. It's one of my favorites in the series, absolute cinema. And that's it. Here's the final tier list, and here's how I would rank them. Thank you for watching, and goodbye!